I'm grateful for Mark Gunderson, architect in Fort Worth, for establishing and renewing the contact with Corky and the College of Architecture. Notable works of Corky, the list is too long to list, but I give you a personal favorite or some personal favorites. The Cistercian Chapel and Library, my personal favorite. Prince and Peace Catholic Church and School, Addison Theatre Center, the Pump House Art and Conference Center. And I like that particularly because it's an adaptive reuse project, a conversion of a 1920 Turtle Creek pump station. Also sort of bookend his many awards, sort of special I find, besides receiving Nummer Design Award over 60, as I said, Corky was inducted in the Fellow of American Architects FIAA in the 1990s. In 2019, Corky was awarded the O'Neill Ford Medal for Design Achievement. By coincidence or not, this lecture hall, that building, is actually designed by O'Neill Ford. I'm thanking the College of Architecture Lecture Committee, Dr. Jeffrey S. Nesbitt, Chair, Professor Zara Safraverdi, Professor Noemi Desplan-Lichtert, and Professor Christy Weyer. Staff member and committee member Rachel Rowe for their service to the College of Architecture, and Lindsay Mims, our Director of Communication, together with Oscar Natividad for the communication through posters. Our building director, Jeff Fulber, and finally, but last but not least, Tim Bender, IT specialist, to make sure we will hear today. So without further ado, please help me to welcome Gary Corey Cunningham to the College of Architecture with his lecture, Reconnecting.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, Upe, thank you very much for that introduction. I'm so sorry I'm not there today. We had planned on flying down this morning, but Southwest planned it differently. I think there's a serious shortage of pilots and ground crew. So we're doing this via Zoom. Which I certainly miss interacting with the students and feeling the room of the first high-rise building in Lubbock, Texas, the great O'Neill Ford building that y'all are sitting in now. So can everybody hear me okay? Can I get a nod? Okay. So this has been a very interesting 18 or 19 months for everyone. And what I want to do today is kind of talk a little bit initially about my experience over the last 19 or 20 months and how it's influenced my thinking about our work and how it's also caused me to go back and rethink or just look at some of the projects we've done over the last 10 or 15 years and how they might be relevant to some of the challenges we as architects and students of architecture are going to be facing over the next generations. So I'm going to try to share my screen now. Says I can't share. Okay, that did it, I think. Okay, are we on? Okay, so 20 months ago, February of 2020, I was actually traveling, and I was traveling back to America from the most distant island on the planet, Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, as many people call it. So it's, leaving a place of kind of isolation and quiet, coming back to America with a mask on was quite a change for me. Of course, the idea of travel, I think, is so important, and I'm going to make little plugs here of kind of different behaviors or different recommendations on your life. And traveling is such a wonderful way to get a sense of the planet, our environments. And you don't have to get on a jet and go to Chile to do that. You can also drive, 100 miles from Lubbock, looking at farmlands, go to Marfa, go to Terralingo, go to El Paso, go everywhere you go, or anywhere you can, and learn about scale, different cultures. It absolutely affects the way you look at your own place in your own life. So, and again, it doesn't have to be anywhere special. And in fact, we're neighbors to one of the most unique, I think, countries in the world, and that is Mexico. And if I could pick anywhere to go and visit and spend time, would be Mexico itself. So you don't have to go to Easter Island or to Europe. Go to Mexico or go anywhere and just kind of get a feel for what's happening in the world. This, of course, are some of the statues in Easter Island that I was visiting and looking at. Also came back to meet my first grandson, Colin Cunningham. This is my third child, or my second son, Miles, and got to visit Miles and Colin on the 15th of February of 2020, and then basically didn't see each other for quite some time due to to COVID and the isolation we were all experiencing. And for me, family life has such a relevance and an important reference to me in my work. Just to again reflect back on family, loved ones, whatever. It should have a say in your work as well. Do not be an architect that lives in isolation, but bring in your rest of your life to your work. Speaking of work, I live and work in Dallas, Texas, and I am in a little building sandwiched between downtown Dallas, this yellow zone, and the river, Trinity River, in a kind of an area called the Design District. And I'm in a 20,000 square foot building, a little office building here. I live back here in the back under this big live oak tree. And in this building, we've got maybe 30 people that office with us, engineers, other architects, rendering people. It's a really wonderful environment. But when COVID hit last year, the place went dead quiet. In fact, I could sit outside in the front yard and not see a car pass in front of my building all day, which was kind of shocking. But being in this isolated kind of period of time, of course, I was watching the mail and receiving packages and making hand sanitizer and tracking down masks and all that kind of stuff. But there was a lot of time to kind of sit and reflect. And I spent a lot of that time sitting on the front porch of my house, a little loft, looking out at the parking lot and the industrial environment beyond. And of course, once COVID hit, it was pretty much empty all the time. So, and it was also strangely quiet. And in fact, I thought that there was an increase of nature or bird life because it became so loud, the birds singing and chirping. But I later realized that all these highways that surround me here had basically pretty much shut down. There were no cars in the roads. And so the sound floor became so quiet that nature literally just started ramping up the sound. And that's all I heard. And it was kind of I felt like that the planet was going back to nature, and that the car had kind of, temporarily been shut down, and we were, feeling the air getting cleaner, the birds getting louder. It was just for me, it was a kind of a really wonderful experience to have this isolation and quiet and time to reflect. Because there's a lot to reflect on, and it's kind of amazing how much time I sat in the front yard, out of the air conditioning, whatever, and just being close to these trees and the sounds and nature. And of course, realized that I yearned for that, and I probably yearned more for the nature and the kind of the light and the openness than I did for people. Of course, I'm kind of a loner much of the time anyway, but there's a lot of thoughts that went through my head during this period of time, and I want to talk about 3 specific projects that that kind of help reinforce some of these concepts that I feel are very valid in our thinking right now. And of course, they're valid all the time, but maybe these issues or these buildings or what we did in these buildings resonate more with me during this sort of time when we are in such a challenging environment. And of course, sitting on the front porch, looking at the different sunsets and the light, and of course, experiencing February freeze getting here when everything was shut. We were shut down for a week without any power at all. And it was kind of nice because we got quiet again and I enjoyed the solitude. And of course, we're now, back to life and busy working, and the building is rather full. And life is much of it's gone back to normal with the exception of flying to Lubbock, Texas. And maybe dealing with the technology. So this first project is a little nature center in Cedar Hill, Texas, about 30 minutes from Dallas to the south. And it is set in about 2,000 acres of pretty much wildlife preserve and a large lake. And our client was Audubon, Texas. And they had a very clear mission. And in fact, we work with the landscape firm named Mesa that, I'm trying to get rid of this screen, that helped kind of analyze the site. And, it's basically almost 300 acres of 4 very distinct habitat systems and quite a few endangered species, both in terms of plants and birds. And in fact, we realized that this land had really not been touched or walked on since Native Americans, several hundred years ago. So it was pretty much intact. And, we came across, all these different systems. And also, here we have a picture of a black, is it a vireo black-banded black cat, vireo bird, sorry. And its nest, which is actually made of the bark, the strips of bark from the juniper tree, which you see a juniper tree there. And these birds need to have these trees in order to nest and in order to produce children. They also need to have no really other trees in the environment besides these juniper trees, only because they need a certain amount of light. And of course, spending time on the site and learning about that was quite wonderful. And the site we had ourselves had its own interesting challenges going on. It was a brownfield. It was an existing satellite dish installation for AT&T and had this massive dish in it. And we had to go about basically cleaning this thing up. And the idea was to put the building on this already disturbed brownfield and not impact the 400 acres of kind of rather sacred environment. So, we proceeded to design a building. And of course, like a lot of projects, it was a very challenging budget. So, you're looking here at, in Dogwood Canyon is this big zone to the south of the site, which is right here in this little tendon piece. And here is an aerial of the site. You can see the highway, which is I think 1632 or something, that rings Cedar Hill and Dallas. And looking back, you can see the 300 or 400 acres of preserve, and beyond you see Joe Pool Lake and all this acreage around you with basically just full of wildlife. And you see the parking we put in, and you see the building. The building is plopped on the site, and it is literally wedged in between this little dish hole, which was placed there to put the dish in, and the dense forest and a creek beyond. So it's a really very tight fit. And the idea is that people bring their cars in and they park and they walk and go on this building and then take off into the nature preserve. So you can see where the dish was located at one time. And here's a view into this bowl right here. And then there's the building itself. And you can see the people walking up to the building, and you see the trees beyond. And you also notice that the building has a very bright white roof. And y'all should know this, but this is a white roof to reflect heat. And because the roof is gently sloped away from the view to the north, nobody can tell it's a white roof unless you're on the air. And of course, the birds that fly around. But this building is a gold LEED building. And so, we are also trying to teach the idea of conservation and respect and sustainability, which is so critical. So here's a shot of the dish, when it was in this bowl. And again, maneuvering through this place, when we first got there, it was full of poison ivy. And unfortunately, we thought we could keep the dish and reuse it, but the owner of the land took the dish with them. I guess it had some value, but that's fine. Now, what's interesting about the siding of this building is, you've got the circle here, which is this dish where the satellite dish sat. And here to the south of the building, you have this creek, which floods quite a bit. And here's a building sandwiched in between. Well, we could not do a traditional foundation where you plant the building into the dirt, because water needs to flow under the building to get to the creek, because the area to the north of the building is higher than the building. So it's going to flow south under the building into the creek. If we had put the building on a foundation, we'd have been stopping the water and probably trying to do a swale around it and killing half the trees in it. Because once you start moving dirt and affecting root systems around trees, those trees are not going to survive. So when you work around trees, you've got to really leave the earth and leave the ground very much intact. And so in section, this little building here, you can see it, and you see the creek here, and to the left here, this is the north entrance. Water needs to be able to flow underneath the building to get to the creek, because it does flood. This is after a good healthy rain, and that bowl is completely filled up. And in fact, we studied making this a permanent water feature, but our client, Annie Brown, who's the director of Audubon, Texas, said, how do you intend to keep water in this feature? Well, we said we'd maybe put a well in a windmill or something like that and pump water into it. And she goes, well, Audubon has an attitude is we do not like drilling holes into the earth. So because it's not a cool thing to do, and the amount of evaporation you have when you have an open area of water like this is devastating. It'll evaporate in a matter of days. So if we were pumping water out, utilizing resources, taking groundwater out of the earth, we would have been really doing a disservice to the land and to the site. So we were very much instructed to use it as a teaching tool and not kind of go with our instinct or intuition to make it a beautiful water feature, but to let it be what it is and teach that to the people that do visit this place. Now, the way we kept the water flowing underneath the building is literally lift the building up off the ground and prop it up. And we drilled some piers in there and used simple steel bar joists and jacked the building up. So this is very much the expression of how the building operates with the land. We respect the land. We're light on the land. We did not engage it with the exception of these 18-inch round pier holes. And the ground plane that was there is still, when we walked in, is still there today, which is such a critical thing. And a very subtle thing, but believe me, when you kind of drill down into this attitude and understand and respect that level of kind of relationship between trees and the land, you'll understand, because there's a tree 5 feet from the building over to the right here that, had we had to drain around this building, we would have taken those trees out and we'd have lost all the impact of this building sitting in the trees. Looking at the building itself, it's a very simple wood frame structure, again, to make it sustainable and to get leads. And the siding is actually an acetified wood, which we use a lot of. In fact, the last project you'll see today has a good bit of this, and the name of this wood is called Accoya, and it's spelled Accoya, and it's worth looking up because this wood does not really require paint or stain. It will not rot. Now, in this case, we stained it with the water-based ink because we wanted to go black and green and have it fade into the trees. We really did not want this building to be obvious or visible. Again, the building is not the point on this project. The building is really a funnel to route people into the nature preserve. And so, you know, I'm not the big dog here. We are very secondary to the purpose of this project. And there's times you've got to realize that and accept that and be comfortable with being the quiet side of the equation and not being the loud, you know, big star architects we all want to be. So there you look at the front elevation with the building picked up off the ground, and of course a very gentle, accessible ramp going up to the building itself, and this low, long building. And it's got a beautiful flow, and as the grasses grow, it does more to downplay the building and just keep it as quiet as it can in the nature of the site. And so this little pedestrian bridge or ramp, you know, spans over this space down here, this dish hole. And you can see to the left here, these little stacked concrete blocks. Those are actually cut up original paving on the site that we cut up and utilized for retaining walls and wheel stops. The idea was not to haul anything off the site, but to reuse every piece we could find. Now, I'll tell you, cutting up this concrete and reusing it costs a lot more than going out and buying some flagstone and stacking it up. But, you know, we felt it was right to spend the money and really somewhat burden the budget to show that we were trying to reutilize this material and again, do a complete kind of attitude on this approach to respect there and not haul any garbage off. And of course, there's signage here explaining what's going on here and the history of the dish. You can see a picture of it there. Again, you can see the building hovering above you here. And this is the ramp going down the other side. So the plan of the building is very simple. There's two boxes. This one has a large meeting area, bathrooms, offices, a little gift shop, place to get your water bottle filled, and 2 classrooms. The important thing is these roof areas that cantilever past the buildings, and this porch that's formed in between the 2 buildings that really form a portal from the gathering area in front of the building to the north to the actual path to the Dogwood, to the canyon itself. So you can see the people gathering here. You see this hole between the 2 buildings in green back there, and there you're looking at just pure nature and the path to the path to the trail. So, you know, going through this, you see, you know, the glass door to go in and get your water bottle filled or use the bathroom. But again, the idea is not to stop, not to go to the gift shop, not to buy postcards, but go and get into the trail and see what's going on out there. Now, on this side of the building, you know, we're very much native, and you probably see some poison ivy right there. And you also notice this room here, which is with this slanted glass. And you may question why this glass is slanted. It's slanted to try to keep the birds from flying into the glass and killing themselves. You know, when you put a window in a forest, it basically makes a mirror. So when a bird takes off and sees that glass, they may see a reflection of a sky. And so they think they're flying into the sky, and they'll slam into that glass and wipe out. That is not a very kind of positive, you know, signal in a nature center to have dead birds sitting around the building. And you'll see later in the last project that there's a new way to do bird safe glass, and we're figuring this stuff out, and so are the people that make glass, and it's becoming, you know, an easier way to protect wildlife, because we lose a lot of birds to glass, and it's often downplayed, but something that, again, every little bit really matters. And any building you do, there's a lot of kind of parameters, a lot of issues you really need to drill down and consider. And sometimes it takes, you veer off for a long time to research and understand what the right solution is. And you've got to back check it, test it, and see if you can even afford it, which usually you can't. In fact, I'm standing in the creek here looking back up at the bird viewing area. And I've seen this creek with water, up to here. So it's very much a seasonal creek. And again, it often floods, and the building is sitting above the water, protected, but the building allows all the water and the hydrology to move any way it wants to, just as it did before the building arrived on site. Here's a picture of one of the parking wheel stops. Again, it's probably a $300 wheel stop. So again, the concept is more important than the deliverable, because again, they were really rather expensive to do. But you know, the idea is very important to reinforce the idea of saving materials and sorry, I was reading something here, and showing sustainability. There's the last little shot of the building again, which very much fades into the landscape. And as the trees around it grow taller, it's going to get even more quiet. But again, it's so critical to understand that this building is not the big impact, or not the point of the project. The point of the project is the wildlife and the nature preserve. And in fact, right now, Audubon is looking at land across the highway, because this site in this precious 300 acres is so overrun right now, because so many people are showing up that it's often has to get shut down for weeks at a time to let the trails recover from the foot traffic. So we were probably a little bit too successful in our kind of goals here. The next project is quite different. It is an urban edge building, an edge of downtown Dallas, and it is a adaptive use of an old 1920s Packard showroom and maintenance building that showed cars and service cars back in the 1920s. Of course, right now it's around a lot of parking lots. The land just to the south of the building here will definitely be redeveloped with large housing blocks over parking with retail and so forth. And there you have the Dallas City Hall. So this is a rather nice neighborhood that's beginning to get reestablished. The building itself is a very simple little two-story, 20,000 square foot building that we renovated. And there's a future site for a larger sanctuary when they have the time and money and congregation to support it. They moved from a suburban location to the edge of downtown Dallas in one of the toughest areas in downtown, which in fact, there's a pretty large contingency of homelessness that's right around this project. And I have to say that my client in this church, they just really embraced this neighborhood with open arms, and they happily moved into this site and really wanted to do something that put themselves here and show that they cared about this part of Dallas. And the cool thing is that we had more building than we needed. So in lieu of just simply building out more space, we decided to remove occupiable space and make it exterior space, because we had no porches, we had no outdoor space besides the hot street and the parking lot. So the yellow here indicates areas on the first level where we basically just removed the exterior skin and made it exterior space. And the second level, likewise, a courtyard, an upstairs courtyard, and an upstairs courtyard here. So this kind of became the primary move to introduce nature and light and gathering space for the congregation, which obviously is very critical now. And in fact, this project just finished as COVID kicked in, and they began occupying the building probably about 3 or 4 months ago. So they're loving it, they're enjoying it, and they're finding themselves utilizing the outdoor space to greet people and hang out and do stuff. The section kind of shows where we've kept the center area of the building conditioned and intact, but then this is exterior here facing downtown, the front door, and this is an exterior space facing the parking lot to the south. So coming down a little bit, I think this is a little bit more current. You can see the building. You see the bays where we remove the brick skin to open up the building. And this is the north side of the building facing downtown. And there you see the one bay we removed. This becomes an entry courtyard to downtown. And right now there's a sliding chain link fence that seals it off for security when it's not being utilized, and opens up, and people simply walk into the space and greeted by this little Japanese maple tree, and then you go into the building. From the parking lot side, you've got 2 bays removed. We've got holes cut into the roofs with vines, and we've got stairwell, and you can see handrails upstairs. You also notice that we did not really paint the building. We pretty much left everything as it was. We talked the client into letting it be like this. You can see an old ramp that was there, the way how they drove cars up to the second level to work on them. Half the columns of the building had been run into so many times, they lost a lot of concrete. We had to reinforce them and protect them because they were almost collapsing. This is the west elevation where we had to add one element. This is an elevator for accessibility, because one stuccoed element adjacent to all this, untouched brick that's been there for, for a long, long time. There's the last window we kept on the second level. The rest of them were completely rotted out, so we had to replace them and put in, unfortunately, new storefront glass, which was a bummer, but this sort of thing happens. And you can see the south elevation, just the brick as it was. If we needed to fill a window in, we simply put whatever brick we had in it, and they painted a brown stripe and put the name of the building on there. Of course, a fire stair out the backside, and that's pretty much it. Going into the lobby, you can see the entry court from downtown. This is the lobby itself, which is stained concrete floors. You can see that the columns with the original paint piled up on it. Pretty much, we did some water blasting to clean some of the paint off. But a lot of natural light coming in from both the north and the south, which is, again, critical. Light is something that feeds our spirit, and it's something that any architecture, any place has got to have, and it needs to have different kinds of light. It needs to have north soft light. It needs to have south light that has shadows. It needs to have harsh light, grazing light. These are things that really make us human, and to be away from such a thing is just inhuman. Get a little stairway coming up. You can see where we simply cut a hole in the floor and put the steel on there and walked away from it. The second floor lobby looking out toward downtown. There's a large opening. There's that window, that one window frame we kept, and there's a hole we cut here and a hole we cut here. You can see looking down, looking back, this opening for light, and looking down, there's the maple tree. It's just doing great. It's getting plenty of light, and it's growing very healthily. It's doing great. In fact, it's going to be coming up to the hole probably in the next few months. So that's rather, it's working, let's put it that way. Very simple handrails. Again, the budget was very tough. We spent a lot of our time getting the project in budget. And again, you're going to find yourselves doing this if you get into this business. It's just the way things are. Not many projects have endless or even big budgets. And frankly, it's having to deal with the budget and take away anything you don't need to have. You cannot afford to put something in that you don't have to have, because there's no budget for it. So basically you strip away everything except for what's needed. And we've been doing this for 40 years and we know how to do it, but every time it's still a challenge. A little temporary sanctuary until they can build a new one. You can see the concrete structure. This was the terrazzo floor from the original showroom in the 1920s. Looking, to the east, you can see glass, and we actually have a tent on the first 6 feet because there's quite a few people that hang out on the sidewalk outside of the space. And sometimes they kind of slam into the glass during service on Sunday morning. The congregation's fine with that. They're very chilled out and they're happy to be in this neighborhood. It's really rather kind of special. Just in this short year during COVID, the building has really been taken over by the vines, and the planting we've done. And it just feels so good to me to have this kind of this urban jungle. When we moved on site, there wasn't even a weed growing out of a crack. So to see this trumpet vine, which is kind of, it's out of control, but it just really makes me feel wonderful. And looking up these openings, seeing vines moving up through there, it's just very special. Really nice moments. Boston ivy coming out off the wall here. A little existing glass brick that was probably put in the 30s or 40s. And again, more of this lovely trumpet vine, abandoned power lines, which we just left there. This place feels like it's been there for right at 100 years. It has a new purpose and has a new sense of place. And it's very much engages and embraces its history, kind of warts and all. And I love that stuff. And I again, cannot help but just congratulate my client, All Saints Church, on taking this on and really following through with their commitment to really to do something that they said they wanted to do. Then this last project is kind of in the suburbs. So we've kind of gone from rural to the edge of urban condition to a suburb that actually is trying to introduce an urban condition and this kind of funky office building and retail site for our client, which is Half Price Books. And they have been our client since the mid 1990s. And they're basically a bunch of hippies that go about doing things in a very interesting way. And we just really get along, and they're pretty nutty people, but I love them. In fact, so this is their headquarters building, which is an old sports town, had about 6 lives. So this building's been repurposed, and they've been in it now for over 20 years. About 8 years ago, we repurposed a 1920s warehouse that was the first lumber yard in this area for Caruth Lumber Yard into an REI. And in fact, the president of Half Price Books, Boots Anderson, she literally chased these guys and said, "I want you in our building because we like the way you think." And she chases clients and tenants that she feels reinforces their attitude about sustainability. These guys sell used books, and they have amazing read programs, and they give books away. They are a model of sustainability. And so, for us to try to save this building and reuse it obviously makes a lot of sense. You can see this is sitting here next to Central Expressway, Northwest Highway. That's Preston Center. Downtown Dallas is over to the left over here. Again, this is kind of in the middle of suburban Dallas, and it's just nothing but cars. The site that we're working on is this building, this 4-story office building here, which is on the small side. It's about 60 or 70,000 square feet, and a 5,000 square foot retail pad that's going to be a restaurant. The building started construction about, almost 9 or 10 months before COVID hit. And when COVID kicked in, we had to shut it down because Half Price had to save every penny it could for salaries, for payroll. So we shut the job down, and Half Price managed to pay all of its employees, not lay anyone off during that period of time. And they stayed healthy. So we kicked the project back in it'll be a year next month. It's been a very, very difficult reboot. A lot of challenges with subcontractors. I think we're on our 5th steel erector right now. So we're going to get there, but it's challenging. What makes this building rather interesting, and I think very relevant to for today's talk, is, and this comes from our client, Boots. That's her nickname. Her name is Sharon. She kept talking about wanting to do a roof garden with trees, and we would say, Boots, we can't afford to put trees and a roof garden on the roof on this building because we'd have to add an elevator stop, stairways, and support all this weight of the landscape up there. And it's just not in the cards for the budget. But she kept pushing us on this thing and kept repeating herself. We finally got the message, and we realized that we could do a building that basically is an area of enclosed, purposeful space. In this case, three levels of office or retail above first level retail, but put these stairways, one stair, a second stair, the elevators, put it outside and make the lobby of this building an exterior lobby. Don't enclose it, don't air condition it, and give us some outdoor space to hang out and mill around. That's what we did. So, again, Boots kept telling us she wanted to be able to be outside, to have events and have people, hang out up there. And of course, it was a smart move economically because we're not air conditioning all that space, but it really became a fun project to take this idea and, in fact, join the 2 sites where you when you're in the 2nd or 3rd or 4th level, you're looking back to the south to the restaurant roof and this outdoor garden that's really formed by this amazing live oak tree that we saved and we kept. But you can see the gray outside space. It wraps around the floor plate. Looking at the 4th floor, This is the enclosed office space here, and this is a 10-foot wide walk around. So you may take an elevator to steer up to the fourth floor, and you may walk around and find the front door to your person you're visiting your office outside around the corner, or you may enter in here and go internally. You may walk back around and go to the bathroom, go into a vestibule, or you may come up for an event and have a glass of wine and sit outside the whole time. There's benches right here. We're going to plant some trees on the second floor into a large planter well, but we see this outdoor space being used a lot. This is a section through the building. You can see the stairwell, which is outside, the elevators beyond. There's the enclosed office space, enclosed retail. And here's the second level balcony. There's a tree growing out of the balcony, out of the second floor. And here we are looking into this, into the beer garden, of the restaurant garden of the restaurant with this large, beautiful tree. And even the way this roof is being designed for the restaurant, we thought about the view of it from the office building looking down. So we've got basically snow fencing up there to block the air conditioning units and kind of give some interesting action going on the roof of this restaurant. This is an outdoor dining space. In fact, there's been several restaurants that wanted to rent the space and offered to take it, but they wanted to enclose us out here. And we just told our client, nope, don't do that. And they listened to us and said, no, we're not going to enclose that. We're not going to increase the square footage. The outdoor space is important as a breathing space between the restaurant and the office building. So we're now working with someone that wants to keep this outdoor space the way it is, keep it intact, and keep that area, that break area between the building and the restaurant. This building is very interesting. It's basically this concrete box, stacked plates that we bolted these stainless steel anchors on, and we basically bolted 2x8, sometimes with steel in between, to them, and built this kind of veil around the building. You can see that the stacks of the floor plates, and then these sticks of wood going up and down. Literally, it's guys up there with drills, in a lift, screwing this wood on to these 2x8s. And the wood it hasn't been planed, it hasn't been finished. It's raw and it's kind of fuzzy. Those stripes you see came from the banding when process of acidification, when they put it into a kiln and they vacuum out and inject basically vinegar to take all the edible meat out of the wood itself. But the technology is guys with drills. We can take the stuff down, move it around. This building may morph for the next 20 years into who knows what. It may end up being a ghetto with floor levels of stuff hanging on. That's fine with me. This is the wood several years later, and you can see some of the strap marks, and you see it's got a nice kind of rough texture to it. We saved money by buying this wood and not having it planed. Often when you buy wood, you've got to surface it on 1, 2, 3, or 4 sides. And this wood is a full 1.1 inch thick by 8 1/8 wide. It would have been milled down to 7.5 by 3/4. We've got an extra 3/8 thickness and an extra, almost inch of size, and also this kind of nice rough surface of the sawmill in the back in the forest. So again, this is focused on budget. To finish the wood would have cost more money than we could have afforded. And frankly, the gnarliness of this wood really lends itself to the building and the attitude and the approach we took, to skinning and shading the building from the sun. So you've got this stack box, and you've got 4 sides of an elevation, and the elevations certainly reflect the solar orientation of the building. This is the south wall, south elevation, and you can see there's reasonable shading on this, and you can see this time of day very little sun is reaching the building beyond. Although at the corner we break away, so we bring in a lot of light to where this tree is going to get planted right here. The west side turns the corner. You can see that is dense right there. And as you move around from the south to the east, you can see the east, we have no horizontal slats at all. Well, we couldn't afford them. The wood's pretty expensive. So we actually researched, and you recall, a few minutes ago, I talked about the sloped glass in the Dogwood Center to keep birds from flying into the windows. Well, here You know, the glazing on the east and north is glass that has white lines etched in it every 4 inches. The birds see those lines and will not fly into it, because you can see the beautiful cloud right there. If a bird is sitting on this rail, it would want to fly into that window to get out. Well, we would probably kill it. So again, you know, the cost of this glass was less expensive than the wood slat screen. We wanted the wood screen, but this was the right move because this is what we could afford. So, you know, you let the budget drive you. You have to at times, and you've got to be flexible, open-minded, because the purpose here was not to kill birds and keep the project on budget, and also to explain that the building has 4 sides and 4 different responses to the climate. And again, trying to coexist with nature that's around us. This is the north elevation. You can see the same glazing is happening over here. This is one of the stair towers. It's finally getting clad in expanded metal lath. Again, both stairways are exterior to save money. This one goes to the roof for maintenance. And again, this is very cost-effective, expanded metal lath welded to simple metal angle frames, and then either zinc dipped or hot dip galvanized. Like all the metal on the job is galvanized. The idea is not to have to paint it. If we do paint it, we'll start painting with galvanized paint down the road. But of course, the idea is not to have any maintenance as well. And we also like the kind of the color palette of the building. Turning the corner from the north to the west, you can see how dense the shading becomes on the west. The lowest element turns the corner because that is a sign band where people put signage for the retail center. So the west has, without a doubt, the most shading, and you can see how dense it is. And you see very little sun getting in there. This increased vertical shading is at the elevator lobbies, where we have a more kind of unique situation. Again, the sun cuts back at the corner to let in light for the plants that are going to get planted right, the trees that are going to get planted right there. This is the walkway in the west. There's a glass storefront of the office building, and that's the west sun. Right now, it's probably about, probably 1:30, 2 o'clock, and the sun certainly is well protected. You know, come 5:36, you'll start getting some light filtered in, but by then the offices are pretty much shut down. The northeast side, you can see this is in the afternoon as well. No sun's reaching it. And by the time it turns a corner to the south, this thing's pretty much in shade. But the idea is you're walking around outside to get to your space, and, you know, promoting people getting outside and getting some fresh air. Go to the bathroom, walk outside, you know, cold weather, warm weather, get some fresh air, move. You know, sitting in the office all day is not healthy, at your computer especially. So, you know, promoting people moving around. Here we are at the stairwell, looking back, you know, to the southwest, and that's the planter that are going to receive about 5 river birch trees, and that's a bench right there. And you can see fire protection sprinklers, heaters, lights. This is a functioning lobby for year-round use. There's the elevator doors on the outside. There's the office right there. Again, exterior sprinklers. That's the walkway on the west side. And there's the entrance to the bathrooms, vestibule. Looking back to the corner, there's the west, that's the south. See the sun filtering in here, but it really doesn't quite reach the wall, does it? And a really fun corner. Interesting view. So, you know, we when you do a project like this, and this was not a very big project, I would say it's about $10 million. You know, we had to engage a concrete subcontractor to do the concrete frame. And it's hard to find a small concrete subcontractor that does this sort of thing. So we had to go with a big guy. And they are so busy and so big that they really didn't want to talk to us. They say, we're just going to do it, you know, and you get what you get. We asked, what kind of forms do we get? Well, you're going to get caliber grade D forms. Grade D means it's probably 30, 40 years old of sheet metal. It's going to be beat up. It's going to have lots of challenges and problems. You look at some of these pans and they're just beat to heck. But, you know, that's what the budget could afford. So, you know, we had to embrace this approach and accept that as kind of a rough aesthetic. it certainly ties nicely into the wood and that kind of approach there. But again, you don't get to choose what you get to use a lot of the time. Economics drive a lot of what we do. We're a small firm. We don't have large budget projects. This client is unique in that they do invest in their buildings, and they probably invest a little bit more than the speculative clients because they're not going to sell this, they're going to keep it. And because this will become an income stream for them, 20, 30 years from now. But still, it's a very challenging project and budget-wise, and you've got to be fluid, you've got to be open-minded, and you can't be a big baby about what you're going to get or not get. You just got to go with the flow and accept it and be comfortable with that. And you better be good at it. It's just, it's the way things are. And in fact, it really informs us in how we do our work. Without this kind of, without these parameters and these challenges, I think we wouldn't have to work very hard to come to what we're trying to get done. And it is hard work. Here's a restaurant, finally seals up and under construction, and this will be covered in similar wood slats. It'll be nice big open porch out toward the outdoor area. This is us a few weeks ago on the job site. This is our superintendent, Glenn, on the office building project. And these are three guys from my office. This is Tom Doherty, a principal. And Tom was very much involved, and we need to thank him for his effort on the first project you saw, the Dogwood Canyon Audubon Center. Tom is our lead guy and the principal in charge of managing most projects in the office. And he got that little wood building through leads, and he really persevered, a very challenging contractor and a challenging committee to make that happen. Eric, awesome young guy who was responsible for the second building you saw, the All Saints Church. And it was Eric who really came up with this great idea of carving the building away and repurposing the building frame for exterior space and outdoor porches. And Michael is the guy that did the project you're looking at right now, Shady Brook. And it was Michael who pressed the idea of bringing the circulation elements outside to save money, to reduce square footage of conditioned space, which also helped us tremendously on parking counts. This site is driven by parking. The building is shoved right against the parking lot, but it kind of works with the urbanity of it and the density of it. But without these three guys, I would not be here with you today. So, my teammates, my collaborators, not to mention people like Glenn, the contractors, the consultants. These people are all so critical to the success of any of these projects, and they just make this stuff happen. And without them, it's just not going to happen. The last little tidbit, which to me is the one element that really informed this project, and that is this live oak tree right here. And if you look at this tree, you realize it's growing at like a severe angle, because until about 2.5 years ago, there was a building right against that tree. It was a little retail strip center built in the 70s. And when we tore that building down, this tree was growing out of the grade beam. And we wanted to save the tree, and we gave it a shot. In fact, the grade beam that was plopped sitting next is still there. If we picked it up, we felt the tree would have fallen over. So we installed this strut here, which is very interesting in itself, because the strut, right now, the tree is resting on a big rubber pad inside that kind of arc steel plate. After a good rain, 4 or 5 days after the rain, the tree will actually lift up and pull away and will not be touching that plate, because trees move. It literally just lifts itself up in the air and is no longer resting on it. And then as water reserves go down, the tree is going to kind of fall back down and land itself on that rubber pad. So, the complexity of nature, the things we work hard to preserve, and this tree is going to make it. It's very healthy. We know our landscape stuff. We work with great landscape architects, but if this one small thing had not been there, this project would not have been the same for me. In fact, it would have been probably a failure. If you think about the impact of this massive green ball between these two buildings, it's everything. It's the breathing space, it's the focal point, and and our client, the developer who was going to help the client at one time said, "Oh, we need to cut that down. It's just in the way." We told our client to fire that guy. They fired him, but our client understood that and respected that, and we spent money to save this tree. But man, without this, it would not have been worth the effort, and we would not have the project that I'm proud of at this moment, and I can't wait to see it finished, frankly. The last comment I have, and this is a practice we've been doing for a couple of years in our building, is allowing people to bring dogs to work. And we're, again, a small building of about 12,000 feet. There's maybe 30 people in there, but we often have 5 or 6 dogs in the building a day. And it's amazing how the attitude and the environment changes because of the presence of the dogs. Not only do you have to be polite to dogs, you can't walk past a dog quick or they'll bark or freak out, but it caused us to also show more respect to each other and be more respectful of the humans in the building. But these ideas of reflecting back to nature, being, taking a break and taking your dog for a walk, take 10 minutes instead of a smoke break, walk your dog. We are thinking about stuff like this all the time, trying to introduce ideas and elements into the workplace, into whatever place we're trying to develop that make it more human. And for me, humanity, you're not human unless you're really engaging in nature, all the aspects of nature, be it wildlife, light, green trees, culture, all these things. And it is one messy, beautiful pile of interaction. So I'm going to leave that with you, and hopefully we have some conversation or some questions here.
Can everybody hear me? Okay, how about now? Can everybody hear me? No. Okay, so thank you, Gary, for sharing all of your work with us. My name is Christy Wire, and I'm going to kick off kind of our question and answer session while I wait for some more questions to come in. But with this theme of reconnecting, I noticed in all of the projects that Gary was showing us that he had this theme of reconnecting with nature. And then at the end, he talks about reconnecting back to people and humans. And so my question for you, Gary, is how did your office environment respond positively, I hope, or negatively, to the pandemic? And then now that everything's opening back up, how are you finding the office environment is reconnecting?
Thank you for your question. Like a lot of people, we certainly struggled through the initial months of the pandemic. And like I said, I was making gallons of hand sanitizer and tracking down masks. But our little offices were only 6 people. We have a landscape firm in the building with about a dozen people. We have some other architects in the building. We have some rendering people. And, we didn't get back to full-time occupation of the building until I would say about maybe 3 or 4 months ago. And we certainly, everyone in my office is vaccinated. Majority of the building is vaccinated, and everyone has been extremely cooperative and understanding. And we certainly had to go through some learning curves to let people work from home. Because, when you're working on computers and drafting programs, you are moving massive files. And we had to bring in fiber to get more connectivity for remote desktop work. And we still struggle a little bit with connectivity, but it's been a nice challenge. But everyone in the building has been fantastic about it. And another question here from asked about how our clients have been responding to this as well. Meeting a lot of Zoom meetings with clients, and still, like we learned this morning, it's still hard to connect, and technology in our infrastructure is pretty challenged right now. There's times when we may just lose complete connectivity with the screen or whatever. People have stayed relaxed. Our clients learned work on Zoom meetings, and we might have a meeting with 20, 30 people from a church, and you may have that many people online at the same time. And the first few meetings are pretty challenging, but people learn to mute their microphones and listen, and you kind of learn the right pace. But frankly, I think that this whole virtual Zoom approach, we're going to see, I think, a hybrid use of this over the years. There are people that are elderly that can't go to church or synagogue or temple, whatever. So you're going to be doing, I think, this sort of thing along with live meetings, just like y'all are now. And we need to get tuned up on our technology and our infrastructure so we can do this, because it's more inclusive of people. So that's just so critical.
Okay, thank you. We have a few questions coming in, so I'll start. One of them states, "Thank you for sharing your wonderful work. I appreciate your attention to site from the oak tree to the watershed. Curious to hear how your conversation relative to this feature of architecture has evolved with clients over the last couple of decades as our understanding of complex ecologies increase."
It's a good question, because 25, 30, 40 years ago, the idea of landscape architecture in Texas was kind of really not heard of. I was lucky to work for a large firm in the 70s that I learned to work with landscape architects and enjoyed their collaboration. But today, clients are more tuned in. Our clients certainly are. They wouldn't be calling us unless they were not. But they get it. And of course, you still spend a good bit of time explaining things to your clients and explaining the balance of putting together a project. Again, you don't go into this thing going, I get whatever I want on my building. You've got to balance economics, you have to balance schedule, you have to balance the needs of the client. It's just all very challenging, but we find our clients become more tuned in and more intelligent every day. Of course, with the availability of the internet and people to look up things, they've got resources, and we find that to be just makes them better clients. So I'm very excited about the future of working with clients, and our clients in particular. And it's just it just gets better.
Okay, this next question sort of ties right in with that. It asks, what has been your biggest struggle with building while respecting the environment around?
I would say, I'm not sure what the biggest struggle is. Obviously, like in the Dogwood Canyon Audubon Center, in that case, we had to be very careful with the fragile landscape or the fragile hydrology of the site. So we had to respect the ground plane. And in that case, that was certainly very difficult and a sensitivity issue, because that foundation was not inexpensive. And each project is going to have its own set of challenges in terms of how to respect the site and the land, and identifying those elements, and then develop a path to get there and not fail. For example, you can have a great plan to save trees, but if you don't put up tree protection fences and threaten people not to get near those trees, then you're not going to have the trees when the project's over. And to be frank, something as simple as a guy in a pickup truck parking under the tree to eat his lunch. You think about that over a year, that truck is going to compress the soil. It's going to push the oxygen out of the soil and crush the fine fibrous roots of the tree. Now we think that trees have tap roots that get water. Most 99% of the trees out there get their water and their nutrients in the first 10 inches of soil. And those roots of those trees are fine fibrous roots, like capillaries in your circulation system. So driving over that can literally crush them and push without the oxygen that cannot do photosynthesis. So you've got to understand the systems of the elements you're trying to save and protect, and then go about protecting them. And you just don't assume that people get it. I've seen projects where you've saved all these trees, and then the last month the landscape contractor comes in and starts trenching irrigation lines into the tree. Well, that trench, which is about a foot deep, through the roots of the tree just killed half the tree, because it's literally severed the roots off, and water can no longer go from the roots to the trunk. So you've got to understand what you're protecting and how fragile it is, and you've got to be careful every step of the way. We did a little school that we actually picked up and moved, a live oak tree, much like the one you saw the last project here, for a little school called Da Vinci. And we spent about $20,000 moving that tree, a very tough budget. And we got it moved, and we put a sprinkler system inside the tree, and the tree did great. Well, the last 4 weeks of the project, they're grading the landscape to plant the grass. A bulldozer drives by and grabs the tree and drags it about 3 inches. And we thought we'd killed it, that same tree. So, again, you almost have to be out there every minute of the day watching what's going on. And again, you can't assume someone's going to be watching it. And if something happens that's terrible, you can say it's not my fault. But if your project is compromised, or your client's vision is compromised, then we've all failed. So it's up to all of us to really fight to make sure that the vision we all develop over our initial period of time with our clients is protected and made sure it's maintained. And and the vision always goes back to very simple, strong ideas. There's no fussiness about that. It's very straightforward. So it's a lot of work, and you just don't take it for granted, and you don't assume it's going to be okay.
So our next question asks, what event or experience has caused you to have a sensitivity to actively address details that will help further your design language and overall clarity to your design moves on a given project?
Another really good question. So, this approach to our work took a while to get there. Again, we office turned 40 years old the 1st of September. But the whole thing about getting projects built on schedule, in budget, is very real. And we've done majority of our work over the years has been very challenging projects in terms of budget. And, I learned early on that there's not money left over to decorate the building. You basically have got to strip everything away in order to get the thing in budget. And if it's not necessary, to the structure or to the operation of the building or whatever, then you really can't justify it. And furthermore, any move you make as a design move needs to have multiple reasons and multiple benefits. Be it shading a building from the sun or the wind. But it's been budget driven all these years. Again, we cannot afford to do pretty things or things that were added on. Again, it's just the budget is so challenging. And over the years, this has really taught us to pursue the idea of stripping away everything that is not essential to the building or to the purpose. So, you're not going to see us promoting, beautiful materials or, this or that. We will spend money on craftsmanship because I like the human hand involved in a building. And, the materials are going to be humble, but they're going to be appropriate, and they're also going to be sustainable, and they're going to last. So, it's all the things that you have to do in order to make a budget happen that has really driven over the years, become our design philosophy. And frankly, if I didn't have this challenging budgets over the years, I'm not sure that I would have developed that approach. So I'm lucky that I had such tough clients and such tough budgets.
So it's interesting that you mentioned having these tough budgets. What has your experience been in the last year with the volatility in building costs being all over the place? Has that made your job harder, or have you already been accustomed to it because of having tough budgets to begin with?
Excellent question. Last year, as you probably know, has been crazy. And we are fighting price increases, lead times. Like I said, on our office building in the last project, we're on our I think our 4th or 5th steel erector because they keep walking off the job. That building should have been finished 6 months ago. It's just not, because it's hard to get people on the job site. gosh, the pricing is killing you at times. And, you got to roll your sleeves up and drill down and go back and come up with new ideas, basically, because they're not going to give you more money. If they don't have it, they don't have it. So everyone has got to, acknowledge that it's challenging, not just the budget, but also we're gonna see subcontractors start to go belly up. You see challenges with craftsmanship because the subs are getting too busy and they're having challenges managing jobs. In fact, a lot of MEP subcontractors are going out of business. It's just, it's all hands on deck. But you've got to do it with a positive attitude, because if you don't, you're not going to get it done. So it's a little bit more challenging than we're used to, but again, this is probably the fourth or fifth budget recession we've gone through, because this definitely has been a recession. The last one in 2008, I'm still recovering from, frankly. That almost killed us. I went through 3 or 4 before that, which were which were a walk in the park compared to 2008. So I figured if I got through that, we can pretty much do anything.
Okay, so do you find that you need to quote unquote sell sustainability to your clients?
Sometimes you do, and again, we're lucky we have clients that call us for a reason. Although, it's you're not going to be able to justify a gold or a platinum LEED building to a client and say it's going to cost you 25% more, unless the client goes, I got this money, I want to spend it. Well, we don't see that happening with our deal. So, selling sustainability, if I can make something sustainable and I can save my client operating costs over the next, 20, 50 years, in terms of air conditioning, in terms of maintenance or paint, in terms of stuff falling apart, then we're going to do that. And again, it's back to this whole thing about balance. You've got to justify your moves, and making something sustainable is going to cost money. It's going to take money from somewhere else. You've got to find a way to balance that out and keep the overall thing in play. And frankly, the idea of the sustainability needs to play into the narrative. So we're lucky that our clients get this. Now, I know I have lots of architects friends that are not as lucky as us in terms of working with clients that don't really care or may not care about such a thing. And, that's, you do the best you can. You don't throw a temper tantrum. You've got to do your best to get them to understand the importance of sustainability and also the payback to them. And, and you've also got to be honest. We don't hide budget things. We tell the truth. And if we want to do something that we feel is important, but it's expensive and it may not have a lot of kind of purpose besides, something that's kind of interesting, we'll tell the client that this is really not that justifiable, but we think it's important culturally or whatever. And they usually go, okay, we accept that and we will spend that money. But again, being honest and tell your client what things cost and, be honest about what you can afford, what you can't, and then, try to get them to accept what your in package is. But it is a lot of back and forth, a lot of conversation. And of course, educating your client is everything. And, again, our clients tend to want to be responsible, but that's not always the case. And, and not all my clients have been responsible clients over the years. We're kind of required to be responsible because we kind of take an oath in terms of life safety and responsibility to our industry or our institution. And, we take that rather seriously.
So we've had a few more questions and they actually relate to each other here. But one of them is, what should students learn and what skills do you look for in prospective employees?
It's funny, we're again an office of 6 people and we hire people, every couple of years. We don't have many people who want to leave and we don't pay that well either. People just like working here. We're very much a family and we just kind of work on things till we get it right. And, we get a salary, we work however long it takes. But, interviewing students certainly like to look at portfolios and look at skills. But, the thing that usually grabs my attention is attitude. People that walk in the office and they want a job, they want to learn, they're not afraid to try anything. To me, it's that can do, and I'll try anything kind of thing that really gets my attention to want to talk to a potential employee more than ever. Because, it's attitude and your persona that matters, and, and how you get along with people. We've got a full-blown wood metal shop here. I don't like people sitting on the computer all day. Everyone goes to job site meetings. We go to the client meetings. It's an office, a collaborative office of people. And we are very careful to respect everyone, not to get stuck at the computer all day, to go in the shop. If you don't know how to work in the shop, learn how to work in the shop, make a model, test it out. We do renderings, but I'd rather show a client a cardboard model or wood model than I would a rendering, because you can fool people with renderings. But a model, people pick up, they look at it, they take it apart, you mess with it. You study it, you tear it up. That is engaging. Looking at a 3D picture can be seductive, it can be deceptive. And, again, I'd rather talk about the environment through almost a narrative and look at models versus showing beautiful renderings. So, this idea of what kind of people we're looking for, everyone's going to come out of school with pretty good skills. And certainly working here, you're going to have model skills and computer skills, but it's your attitude that's going to make you want to be part of this office and make us want to invite you to come in to be part of our office.
Well, that's really important for all the students in the audience to know. Our last question in the question and answer chat is, how would you best incorporate nature in sites where the environment isn't necessarily a predominant feature?
So the second project y'all saw, which was that church on the edge of downtown Dallas, that environment had no nature at all. It was parking lot, and roads and streets on all four sides. And, and we cut some holes in the pavement, planted some trees, planted some vines. You can make nature happen. It's just, you just do it. And you give nature tools it needs, which, usually is light, water, dirt, and some space. Don't crowd it. Sometimes you can crowd it if it's the right certain kind of plant, but, you find ways to bring nature in. And I consider also light, rain, wind, dust. These things are all nature. And, it's important to experience such things, again, like, the last project, getting outside and walking, for 5 minutes to go to the bathroom. We did 5 years of work for a Native American tribe in Colorado in the Four Corners in Ignacio. And we did a school for 3-year-olds up through kindergarten. It was a Montessori school. We got to decide what kind of school is best suited for this tribe. And in working with the tribe for several years, I learned that the tribe had a reputation with the local school district that a lot of teachers in the school district thought that the Native American kids weren't very bright because they were always quiet, they wouldn't answer questions, and they wouldn't talk. Well, I come to find out, just spending, a couple years with my clients, that with the tribe, young people are taught to hang back. And it's the elders that are allowed to speak for the tribe, because you respect your elders. And in a Native American tribe, that's even more important. But these kids did not raise their hand and did not engage because they felt they were being rude if they did such a thing. So, another aspect that I learned, there's a lot of deaths during the holidays, Christmas holidays, with young people or adults in the tribe. They may have a car accident, they may have suicidal tendencies. And, there's a lot of different theories about all that, but when you get down to basic climate design, when winter comes, there's less hours of sunlight in the day. And it's actually the amount of light that occurs in the fall that signals trees to start dropping leaves. It's not the temperature, it's light. So, I kind of was asking myself, well, if the trees are not getting much light during the winter time, what about the humans? What about these kids in these classrooms? They're not getting as much sun. They're not getting as much fresh air. maybe we need to find a way to bring nature into the classroom. So we decided that every classroom we design in this school is going to have windows from 2 orientations, and each classroom is going to have a large porch. So we can encourage classes outside. Furthermore, believe it or not, this is in Ignacio, Colorado. When it gets down, 5 or 10 below in the wintertime, you have to walk about 4 minutes to get to the cafeteria for lunch. So midday, the kids are going to stand up, put their coats on. They're going to walk, 2 by 2, down the porch. It could be a blizzard outside, and they're going to go to the cafeteria in the cold weather. They're going to go inside the cafeteria, take their coats off, sit down and eat. And they're going to put it back on and go back to the classroom. But that action right there, standing up and walking for those few minutes is going to get them fresh air, get them light, and move their bodies. And I was taught that by another client in the 90s. We did a little school, French school called La Ligue Française, and it's a French school that they put all over the world. And that client asked to have all circulation hallways to be exterior. They wanted no interior walkways. So one client teaches me something about getting out, taking a walk from the classroom to the gym or to the cafeteria. And then, 8 or 10 years later, I find a situation where, that trick there makes a lot of sense. So, just those simple things and breaking down the science, you can't assume anything when you're as an architect, and people are not going to tell you these things. You've got to kind of figure it out for yourself, and you've got to read in between the lines, look at the body language of your clients, listen to how they talk, listen to what they're saying, and you can begin to really break down and understand what's needed. And a lot of times what's needed goes beyond the physical aspect of a building. It goes to the program and how the buildings are used. And we engage with our clients and how the buildings and how the program is used. We've told clients they don't need a damn building. We got fired because we didn't want to do a building because we didn't think they needed a building. If that's the case, that's the case. So, it's don't take anything for granted and do your research.
Well, unless there's any questions here in Lubbock, that is it for the chat. So Gary, thank you so very much for your presentation and taking the time to speak with us today. It was a very interesting presentation, so we appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. And I'm so sorry I couldn't be there in person. I really was looking forward to this. And I was very much bummed out this morning when I learned that the flight was canceled. So I look forward to coming up because I was also want to kind of move through the studios and visit with some students. So we'll find a time to do that. I love Lubbock, very important city, great music city, and Texas Tech is an important school. And I, applaud all of you and the work you're doing up there. So thank you all so much for inviting me to come into your Zoom screen today.
Certainly. Thank you. We look forward to hosting you in person soon.
Take care. Thank you again.
All right. Bye.